even going to get in there?
So there's been a slight issue.
Can you even lift that?
There's been a bit of a fire. So I have hit a roadblock. I don't know what to do next. Or I do know what to do, I just don't know how to do it. Obviously, I could tidy up, but that's not very fun, so I'll do that later. See, the thing is, I need a desk, and I want a really nice desk. This is going to be one of the feature pieces of the room. Now, originally, my plan was to use resin and have a kind of an amber-like resin with insects in, and put some bits of wood in and make a really nice resin table. The thing is, whilst I'm waiting, I can't really get on with much else. See, the desk is going to go along here, and I want a chimney here, and maybe a bit underneath, maybe not. And until I know the thickness and the height of the desk, I can't put that wall in. And until I've put that wall in, I don't really want to finish off the electrics because there might be something I want to put in that wall that is electrical. So I've been online looking up wood 3 meters long by 80 centimeters wide with a live edge, and they're coming around about £800. And to be fair, I did consider buying it, but that one piece of wood without doing anything to it would be about 10 to 20% of the project's cost so far. So I called up the man that delivers the wood to work, and he said he had some live edge Giant Redwood, 3 meters long, 80 centimeters wide with a live edge. And when I asked him how much, he said £150. I did not see that coming. So it looks like we're definitely going to go down this route. I might come up with some ideas when I get there, but I'm going to go and take a look at this wood. It seems like an absolute bargain. If there's any minor imperfections with it, that would be great. I can just carve some bits out, put some resin in there, and put some beetles or something in there. This is going to be epic.
So I took an hour's drive to go and see James. He's behind the sawmill right there. He showed me some of his toys, and then he impressed me with his wood. Now, the piece of wood I chose was this wood behind the stack of wood and at the bottom of another stack of wood. So it took us about 40 minutes to get to this, but we got it in the end. And then all I had to do was wait for it to be delivered.
So it is the 18th of July today. This is a big day for me. Last year on the 18th of July, I got my very first delivery to start building the office. And today I'm getting a giant piece of wood that is going to be the desk. This is the first thing that is going to go inside, and it's also the feature piece. And it's also my mum's birthday. 1 minute. Bye. Yep, love you. Bye bye. Okay, so it may be my mum's birthday, but she's not getting a huge piece of wood today. So this is the wood. It's 100mm thick, which is a bit thicker than I was expecting, so it is a bit more expensive. It's 77 to 80 centimeters wide, and I don't know exactly how long it is. But I know it's in excess of 3 meters because it's longer than my B&Q value tape measure. Now, I was going to record this being delivered, but it was quite heavy, and rather than filming, they preferred me to help them carry it. And this brings me to the issues. You see, where it was thicker than I originally planned, it's going to make it harder to cut, it made it more expensive, and it also is going to make it very difficult to move around. I've got a few issues to tackle. On top of that, we have this crack. I was originally going to cut this side off, but I really like the little knot down here. So I'm going to cut the nicer end off. There's a little blemish, and my daughter made a little dink by dropping some wood on it. And not to mention, I'm not 100% sure it's going to fit between the sockets. When you combine all these issues with the fact we've got a barbecue in 2 days and my girlfriend is not going to want it here, this could be an issue.
How is that even going to get in there? Can you even lift that? It's on my grass! Get it off my grass!
I find that when you get to a point where you don't know what to do, the best thing you can do is just walk around it and look at it for a bit and think. I find rubbing your chin in this scenario really helps. Okay, so now I have a plan. I'm going to cut this end off. I'm going to use an angle grinder with a coarse grit to sand the saw marks off. I'm going to then blend it into the live edge that looks nice here. I'm somehow going to come up with an ingenious idea to fill this in. For the crack, I'm going to make a laser cut design, burn it in, and make an inlay to fit inside it. I'm not going to get this done in 2 days though. Let's get started. So, a while ago, my girlfriend bought me this t-shirt. I really don't like it, so I'm going to use it for sanding. She is really not going to like me this week. So let's do this. I look like such a twat. So the belt sander is actually working pretty well, considering it kind of looked like that to start with. Let's continue. So I've been out here hours. This is going to take a long time. This is the end I've started. And this is the end I've got to get to. So I have been out here sanding for a few hours. You can hardly tell. These marks, I don't know what they are, they seem to be particularly tough to get off. And the belt and the belt sander's dug into the plastic. This is going to be harder than I thought. Right, I have done sanding for the day. I got bored, but also it's getting late and I don't want to keep the neighbours up. But I haven't finished yet because I have a cunning idea. Those crows are being really obnoxious. So what I want to do is make sure I cut the ends so they're the perfect distance apart, but they're also parallel. Obviously, I'm going to want them square with the side against the back wall. Assuming that inside is square, I'm going to need to check that. So now I have a plan. What I've done is got it as level as possible, and I'm going to use a laser level. By using the laser level, I can make sure these vertical lines are parallel, and hopefully the bottom one will be horizontal. The only thing is, in the daylight, it's really hard to see the lines. So I'm going to wait for it to get dark, just to make sure that the bottom line is 100% level. Okay, so it was already dark enough. I just had the laser too close to the wood. No one's perfect today. Now this is actually pretty level, but now it's even more level. I am pretty happy with that. Actually, it was better before. No, it wasn't. 7mm off the bottom. I need to raise this end by 2mm. 1.5, but I think that'll do. Just above 0.5. Okay, that was as close as I'm getting. Most of it's 0.5, but it's 0.7 down there. Okay, so I've just gone inside and I have used this laser measuring thing, and it says it's 2.79 meters. So it makes sense to measure 2.79 meters across and mark the line. However, when I did it earlier, it said it was 2.78 meters, which has left me wondering, how accurate is this? So what I've decided to do is measure 3 lines, 2.78, 2.79 and 2.80. And then tomorrow I'm going to cut a piece of wood to those lengths and see which line is correct, and then cut the right one accordingly. Okay, so that was very time consuming. I'm going to go to bed in a bit. If you know a better way, let me know. But with the tools I have, I think that's the best I can do. I've just got to make sure I don't sand off the lines before I cut them. So here I'm using a very high-tech method of taping 2 bits of wood together to get the right length between the wall. Now doing this, I discovered something a little worrying. The walls are not parallel. There's 5mm difference from the front to the back. So coming out here and measuring my lines with my high-tech measuring stick, I have realized that the parallelness of the lines is not as accurate as I thought. There seems to be 5mm extra away from the wall than there would be near the wall. This could mean that when you combine my 2 mistakes, they cancel each other out. And I'm gonna, fingers crossed, go with that.
Okay, so initially I was going to use a chainsaw to cut the table. However, I wanted it to be completely square, so I decided to go with a circular saw. Now to make sure I got a perfectly straight line, I decided to use a 3mm piece of sheet wood to guide the saw along. Now combining my desk with the thickness of the wood, it was 103mm and my clamps are only 100mm. So they would not fit. So instead what I did was I weighed it down with a heavy piece of wood. Now again, this is obviously not a very good idea, and I found out why when the saw slipped underneath the wood and made a shallow cut that I didn't want, but we'll come to that later. And as the circular saw didn't fit all the way through the wood, I had to finish it by hand with a handsaw. Okay, so we have it cut. Hopefully this is going to be the right size. I would like to move it in there and see how it fits, but I'm the only one at home at the moment, and I might be able to move it in by myself, but I don't think I'll be able to do it without damaging anything. This was a slight issue. The flimsy bit of wood I was using as a guide flipped up and the saw went underneath. But I'm just going to add that to the list of other things I need to sort out. So I did a bit more sanding and left it a bit, and that's when my girlfriend decided to clean the patio. And apparently she lost control of the hose and accidentally washed the wood too. But I'm not going to be able to work on this until it's completely dry. Should be about a week or two. So while I've been waiting for the wood to dry, I've been tinkering. You see, I want to put an inlay in the wood, just like this. Well, not quite like this. I want to do it better, but this was just a practice. I've had to learn about kerf, which is the width of the laser, and it has taken me a fair amount of my day to get this far. But if you want to learn about inlays, you can either drop a comment down below and I will do a video of any question you ask, or watch somebody else's video, it might be quicker. So what I've got here is a 4mm plywood at the moment that I've put into an engraved hole in this piece of redwood. Now it's still a bit raised. If this was not plywood and a decent wood, I would sand that down flat. But what I've done here is I've actually put this in, there's no glue or anything, it's just been held in by friction, and it is incredibly tight. When I come around to doing the inlay on the table though, I will be using glue. Okay, so in YouTube world, it's been about 5 seconds. In real life, it's been a few weeks. I've had to go on 2 holidays. First world problems. But during this time, I've managed to obtain some wood for inlays. Now I did ask for it to be 6-7mm, and I think it's about there. The only thing is when he cut it, it was flat, but now it's bowed, which doesn't seem like a big problem because it's only a tiny bow. But if you put that in an inlay and then you sand it down, you might have some gaps in there. So I have an issue. So I'm going to have to come up with a way when I'm burning it to make sure it's completely flat. I've also gone and got one of these, a moisture detector. You put it in the wood and it tells you there's about 8% moisture in there. Now I don't really understand entirely how it works, but according to Bosch, apparently this is ready to be finished and done whatever I'm going to do with. So let's do it. Okay, so what I got here is 2 parallel bits of wood. I'm going to place this on top here. They're the same thickness, so I'm going to screw this into place and hopefully hold it flat. I don't think this is a good idea, but it's the best idea I have. Okay, so here is the cutout. I'm very pleased with that. Looks fairly straight. I'm pretty happy with that too. And this is going to go over this crack here. Now, I do actually like the crack. It's kind of a bit of the wood's history, and I want to keep it in there, but it's just going to cover it. And I say hold it together a very small amount, kind of like a bow tie. Now, ideally, you'd want the grain of whatever you're holding together the crack with to go that way, but I haven't got a piece of wood that long, so I've done it this way, and I'll see what happens. Next step is to burn the inlay. Okay, so here we have it lined up. I've lined it up pretty much along the crack, and that's going to get me hopefully the position I'm after. Now the good thing about these diode lasers is you can actually just place them on the wood really easy like this, and they're easy to move around, which makes it ideal for doing this. Let's give it a go. Okay, so there's been a slight issue. There's been a bit of a fire. That's not good. And just in case anybody's wondering, I turned the electrics off before I doused it with water. But I'm going to try to get the water off now and see if I can save this project. So I'm guessing what's happened here is where the crack's quite deep, the laser's become defocused, and it's gone really hot and started a fire. Now I had an issue before where the laser cutter kept stopping because it thought there was a fire and there wasn't, so I taped up the fire sensor. Obviously, a really stupid idea, so this is why the fire was so big, it burnt through the table, onto the floor, and it didn't stop until it melted the tape off of the sensor. I do not recommend taping up sensors. So, needless to say, there has been a change of plans. What I'm going to do instead is carve the hole out bigger and then burn the inside, and I'm going to fill that hole with bugs and resin. I'm still going to keep the weird dinosaur fossil design, I've just engraved it slightly lower down, and actually I really love how this looks, and it appears the cutout fits it perfectly. So I went ahead and burnt in this ammonite I designed, with the help from AI. Now it did take me a while to get the design I wanted, and I did have to change a lot. So if you want to get your hands on these files, I've left a link in the description below. Any money made will go straight back into the channel.
Okay, so now I've just had my second fire. Now the good news is that I took the tape over the sensor off, so I caught the fire nice and early this time, and my machine didn't melt another guard. The bad news is that it's taken out this section here of the table, which is going to be really annoying to try to fill. What I was doing was I was trying to burn deeper here so I could turn this one into a button. I'm going to have to come up with a genius idea now to cover my mistake. So there we go, we've learnt not to engrave too deep with a laser engraver. Luckily for you, you've learnt from my mistake.
I certainly wish I had learnt this from somebody else's mistake. Anyway, here's the inlay. And again, I made 3 mistakes before I got there. But it's all part of the learning curve. So despite the fact the inlay fits in incredibly tightly, I still decided to glue it into position. I don't think this was completely necessary, but I did it just to be on the safe side. I then used some wood and a hammer to gently tap it into place. It didn't seem to go in very deep, so I then whacked it as hard as I could. Next I put in the inlay of the smaller ammonites. Now I did lose some of the pieces, but I thought it would be good if I filled the holes with some resin. And the big one here, I was planning on using it for a button for the lights I'm going to install. So I sanded down all the high points, and then I went off to research electrics. It turns out it was way more complicated than I expected. We have the positive and negative here, and then for some reason we've got 3 other wires here. Uh-oh.
Right, so I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I say no idea. I have probably about 20% of the information I need to make this work. I spent hours going through YouTube trying to find stuff out. Basically, what I have is this switch, which is a touch switch. I believe I can extend the range of this switch by attaching a wire to this transistor. Now, this is the tiniest chip I've ever seen. I don't think I've seen a lot of chips, to be fair. But I've not soldered before, and I'm pretty sure this is not a good way to start. But so I ordered this off Temu, but it doesn't matter if I completely ruin it because it came with 20 of them. So I have 20 goes to get this right.
So I did a lot of research and I ordered a lot of stuff, and I'm still not sure how to tackle it. I got 5-volt LED lights and a particularly powerful transformer. But I read online, if you don't know what you're doing, you can start a fire with it. And well, I don't know what I'm doing, and I've already accidentally started 2 fires on this project. So I'm going to try using this Arduino to power it. I bought it for another project, and then completely forgot about it.
But what I'm going to try to do at this stage is power this switch. It's got a tiny little LED on it, and then from there I'm going to see if I can increase the range. Wish me luck. The Arduino is on. I have turned on the switch. Oh, it's gone off. There we go. Okay, so I have made switch work. I might only need one of the 20 sensors at this rate. There we go, a mini breadboard. Dad joke. This is where it can all go wrong, because there's no space to work with on this. Let's go for max temperature. Surely the hotter the better. What's on there? It's on. Oh, it's come off. I thought that was too easy. Let's try again. think it might be too hot because it looks like it's actually burning the circuit board itself. That is one down. I've literally, it's hot. So I've literally just dropped solder across there. So I'm gonna start again. Attempt number 2. It toggles on and off when I touch it. So there we go. That is what I was after. Now I know with soldering, you don't actually heat the solder, you heat the wire that's touching the solder, and it should draw the solder onto it. When everything's this small, it's very tricky to do.
So after a few hours of tinkering, I managed to get it to the stage I wanted. I had the Arduino powering the switch. I then soldered a wire off of the transistor on the switch that I could turn the switch on and off by hovering my finger near the wire. Now I would have gone into more depth about how I've done this, but the video would be hours long. But if you do want a video on how to make this kind of electric switch, drop a comment down below and I'll get onto one as soon as I can. So the moment of truth, it looks like I can turn the switch on and off through the wood. And the table for that reason should be easier to build because I won't have to make a button that goes up and down.
So I'm going to need to drill through 100mm of wood. So I've got this long thin bit. In fact, I've got a set of slightly different sized bits. And hopefully one of these will go all the way through the wood without breaking it. See what happens. I'm actually worried about how thin this wood is. We're through. So I'm going to want the cable to sit nice and flush in here. And my manager actually got me this carving set for Christmas. And I feel I can just gently carve a channel in the grooves. So the wire in the kitchen was very thin and flimsy. So what I've actually decided to do is to go for a really thick piece of copper wire. The reason I've decided to go for this over the thin copper is that if this breaks inside the table, trying to solve it and repair it is going to be an absolute nightmare. This is less likely to break, therefore possibly a better idea. A thinner piece of cable will be very hard to thread through here as well. I'm going to need to make this deeper in the table. Hello airplanes! So I'm using a hand tool because I didn't want to damage the wood, but it's taking too long. So I'm going to try the power tools. What I'm going to do is just put this final piece on and sand it down. This needs a substantial amount of sanding down, because if this goes wrong, it's going to cause so many problems. Let's see if the electrics work. LED's not on. No, got it in the wrong holes. Switch them over. LED's still not on. Why is that not working at all? It's just not working. Why is this not working? That's working.
Now, I spoke to somebody at work and they said a thicker piece of wire would have a different amount of resistance in it, and it could be this that is stopping it from going through the wood. Let me know in the comments down below, because I still haven't solved this issue yet.
I have no idea why that isn't working, and I've just glued it all into place. That's not coming out. I don't know. I didn't test it before I glued it in place. Why didn't I test it before I glued it in place? At this point, I just want to get the table sanded down and just done on top. I've had enough.
So I'm going to put that on hold for now, and I decided to attach monster wheels to the bottom of the desk so I could easily remove it from the office. And then I decided to get some filler to fill in the bottom of the crack, so I could then later fill it with resin. I realised I don't have 2 tools I need. I don't have a chisel, and I also couldn't find my spatula despite spending about half an hour looking for it. So instead of using a chisel, I'm going to use a butter knife to scrape out the charcoal from this gap. I'm going to try to. And instead of a spatula, I'm going to fold up a Chicago Town stuffed crust pizza box and use that to spread the wood filler in. So my phone ran out of battery, so there's no footage of me trying to spread the fill of the pizza box, unfortunately. But here you can see I filled in the gap as best I could. I've squidged it in as far as I could with the pizza box and then sanded it down smoothly afterwards. So the idea is I fill this again a bit more at a later date now. I'm done for the day, and that should hopefully hold the resin in, and I can put some beetles and stuff in there and make it look like amber. Now, you might think there's never a good time to get dead insects sent to you by post, but this was the exception. I was surprised how easy it was to go online and just buy dead beetles. I literally just googled it and found these on Etsy. These were by far the cheapest I could find, and I got a variety. I think it was about £25 for 15. And because I didn't know exactly how I was going to use them yet, having a handful of different insects was quite useful.
Oh, yes.
I was probably a bit more excited about this than a grown man should be. Some beetles just look absolutely awesome, although my girlfriend probably disagrees. And whilst they look pretty cool, they do not smell pretty cool, particularly this one. But I can't spend all day looking at beetles, time to get back to work. Now this is the part I haven't been looking forward to. You see, I want to put resin in the table, but I don't want to carve into it. It just doesn't seem right to cut into such a beautiful piece of wood. But I can't have it both ways, so I'm going to carve into it. Now to do that, I'm going to use this. This is a cheap die grinder I found on some Chinese website for around £50. I've not used it yet, so I'm just going to hope for the best. It works with my Makita batteries, so hopefully it'll be fine. I'm also going to be using these. These are some Kurzel carving bits. These were probably more expensive, I think, than the die grinder itself, so hopefully they'll do a good job. Now the idea is to carve along these cracks. I might even put one here as well. And I quite like the idea of going under some of the wood and having the resin flow underneath. I'm going to make it partly transparent so you'll actually be able to see that it goes underneath. I think that could be quite cool. Let's get started. Okay, so I've had a slight change of plan. The carving tools are great, but they take a long time to get into the cuts. So I'm using this. This is like a Manpa carving tool disc thing. If you want, I can drop a link in the description down below, but it makes really light work of cutting through wood. Let me show you how good this is. It's just so smooth and cuts so cleanly and beautifully. Not that Giant Redwood is the hardest wood to cut into, but it's doing a really good job. So I'm going to start with this and then finish with the carving tool. Another great thing about this tool is you can also use it to carve sideways as well as backwards and forwards. So if you were carving a bowl, you could literally just use this one tool and then smooth it out once you're done. The reason I was switching between the two is it couldn't get as deep as the die grinder could. So I start the hole with the Manpa disc tool and then switch over to the Kurzel tools to get deeper and smoother. Now the reason I went with a cheaper Chinese die grinder over the Makita one wasn't purely because of price. When I read through the reviews on the Makita die grinder, it said the Makita one could only hold a bit with a shaft of 6mm or smaller. Now the shaft for the Kurzel bits were 1/4 inch, which is 6.35mm. Now 0.35mm isn't a lot, but there was the possibility that it wouldn't fit in the Makita die grinder. Whereas this Chinese one had a chuck on it. So although it's a bit more annoying and slower to change, to stay on the safe side, I decided to go with the Chinese, although it is possible the reviews might have been wrong and it may still fit in the Makita one. Having said that, the cheaper one really wasn't a bad option. There was one bolt on it that kept coming loose, and in the end I actually lost it when it fell out. But this was a minor issue and the tool still worked perfectly fine, and for long periods of time. You can see like I've got a nice little hole in here. Got the same in here. Hello. Also I accidentally dinked here quite badly, like that's quite deep. So I might have to just carve that in deeper and fill that with resin, I think, to make it look like it wasn't a mistake. The carver came out here as well. I might just try sanding that. So I've made that deeper in there and I've tidied that up. Next step, we're going to burn the insides. Okay, so for some reason I always fail to light the blowtorch. I don't know how, but the flammable gas always seems to blow out the flame. Even as I'm walking around the table, it manages to go out and I have to light it a few times. Okay, so in every project there's a bit of a panic stage, and this is it for me. I think this will still look alright, but there's a lot of hoping in there. Next stage is to mix some resin, but I'm gonna let that cool down a bit and stop smoking. I'm also gonna watch it for a while to make sure it doesn't actually reignite as well. Okay, so now it's time to use the resin. Now I've got some deep holes in this table here, so I'm gonna use the deep pour resin. However, before I do that, I'm gonna do a thin layer, and I'm just gonna coat a thin layer around all the inside of the cracks, partly to see if there's any leaks. Hopefully if there are any leaks, it might help fill it. And you should also hold down any bubbles that want to come out of the wood as well. So it'll be a good practice to do that. Now I experimented earlier with orange in here, so I know for 200 grams I need 2 drops of this. And I also put some beetles in there as well. Now if I add a light to this, you can see there's enough that it still keeps its colour, but it's also going to let some light through. So for me, that's perfect. Now, doing a coat of resin will also help me stick any beetles in there that I want to stick to the sides, otherwise they might just float up. So I'm going to do that at this stage as well. Now I do have a slight problem in that the beetle is black and the inside of here is now charcoal black. I'm worried you're not going to be able to see the beetle, but I'm not going to go and sand it all down now. Okay, so now I'm going to mix them together. For this one, it's a 2:1 ratio. I'm going to go for 200 grams, or 198 to be exact. And apparently you do have to be exact with this stuff. So I'm going to put in 66 grams of the hardener. This shouldn't have to fill this much. I wonder if it's because I've got the scales on wonky. If you're going to measure it out, do it on a flat surface. That has not gone to plan. This is going to be hard to stir now without splitting it everywhere. Now because my scales weren't flat and the ratios probably now aren't even, it's going to be a bad idea to use this. So I'm going to use it anyway. Hopefully it will still work. I don't know. I say it's only for coating the inside, so hopefully it won't matter. Hopefully. Now I've got to stir this for 5 to 15 minutes. Ideally you should be doing this with a respiratory mask on. I don't have one, but I'm outside, as much ventilation as I can get, and hopefully I won't die. I'm really bored, but you can't stop mixing until there's no swirly pattern inside, and there's still a tiny bit of swirly pattern. I'm now going to apply it to the table. Now I've been doing it for about 15 minutes, but it's still not perfectly swirl free, which makes me think that the ratios are completely wrong. But I'm only doing it on the inside, so hopefully if anything goes wrong I can just cover it with something else or scrape it off. Now to apply it I'm going to use an old brush. Oh well, this is a brand new old brush. I'm just going to paint it inside. I've got a bit of charcoal in there, but I don't suppose it matters. I'm just going to try to coat it as much as possible. Now there is a lot of dirt and stuff in there, but I'm not terribly worried for the simple reason that it's supposed to look a bit like that. Okay, so that's what I got now. Hopefully it'll seal any bubbles in, stop air leaking out when I go to put in the rest of the resin, should stop any orange colour leaking into the wood, and detect any cracks and hopefully fill them. So the next step is to now add the beetles. This bit should be fun. I accidentally broke his leg off. Look at this little beetle, he's pretty cool. Now I thought with the resin these guys would just stick in place, but that does not appear to be the case. Look at that. Look at the colours on this stinky little fella. Oh, look at the colours on these. Unfortunately the orange might hide them a bit. Now I was hoping for just beetles, I wasn't expecting these little flies. But if I don't use them in this table, what else am I going to use a dead insect for? This one
I haven't even opened yet. It's got beautiful wings, but I'm worried it's going to absolutely stink. Yep, it's not good. Now it's out, look at those wings. So once I've got them in place, I'm just going in and dropping a little bit of resin in over the top of them. Hopefully this will keep them in place, and then when I pour the rest of the resin, they won't float like these little ones did here. Okay, so here they are all set in place. And this is my favourite bit here. All my little favourite beetles are in this little hole there, so hopefully that'll look really nice once it's all done. Okay, the first layer of resin has gone off, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tape up the edges. Now I've had no leaks, but I just want to make sure that there is no way that this resin is going to be coming out of this table. The other thing I've done is I've made sure the table is completely level, both this way and that way. Okay, so I've just spent 10 minutes to mix this before I've got rid of all the lines. It did take quite a long time. Now, the next step is to put in some of this. I found I needed 1 drop per 100 grams of this for the colour that I want. So I'm going to put in 9 drops. This is taking ages as well. So there you go, you can see those 9 drops actually went a long way. Now I'm going to pour it slowly to minimise the amount of bubbles. And actually in here I'm not that worried about bubbles. I think in amber it wouldn't be too out of place. There's a lot of bubbles in there. Slightly concerned that I won't be able to see the beetles now. I'm going to let that settle for a bit. Now this is the one that had the crack in, so I'm just going to pour a little bit in and make sure that I don't see any pour straight back out the bottom. That's gone completely murky, which is quite worrying. I'm worried I won't be able to see the beetles. I'm going to give that a bit of a blast with a blowtorch, because although I don't mind bubbles in there, I don't want all the bubbles on top. I'm going to put this on here as well. I don't like the way that's pulling towards the edge. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a quick blast with a blowtorch. Now I'm not sure if that's a bubble or his eye in there. I'm just going to give it a little poke and see. I think that's just a reflection on his eye. I've just heard a leaking sound, which is not good. And that is why. I'm going to need to feel that pretty sharpish. I don't think this is going to work, but I haven't got any other ideas at the moment. Let's see if that does anything. And I've got to clear the floor up as well now. So I'm not going to fill all of that up today. I'm going to wait for that to dry and do it in another layer and hope that that works. Yeah, and we can see it has managed to find its way through again. So I'm just going to tape it more. Okay, so this is what I was worried about. It has now started leaking out the other side where I have the wood for the wheels on there. I have no idea how I'm going to get that wood off now. Right, so it's 2 days later. There is some good news and some not so good news. The good news and very surprising news is that there's still quite a bit of resin in here. The taping up job underneath did a fairly good job. I'm hoping now that the resin is going to have sealed in there. The bad news is we've got a bit of cracking. Can't really see the beetle too well in there. It's particularly bad with the light reflection. Some of it looks quite nice though. That's quite cool. I like that. So today now I'm going to repeat the process from a couple of days ago. I'm going to pour into the last holes and then try topping this up again. I'm just going to hope that it's blocked itself in well. It's probably not the best idea, but by now you've probably realised I follow quite a few bad ideas. So I'm going to get a new box of resin out, I'm going to mix it up. You don't need to see me do all that bit again. I'll show you when it's done. You get to cut out all the boring bits.
Okay, so I decided to show you a sped up version instead. Now this is my first time properly working with resin. It's certainly not the best project to start with. It would have been a lot better starting with something smaller and learning a bit more about the material first. I didn't know what I was doing and I watched hours and hours of tutorials and a lot of reading up on it to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. At least that was the intention. I certainly did make a lot of mistakes, and that's fine because now I know much more about it. Because after all, if I hadn't seen how quickly it had got through tiny cracks, I wouldn't have known that I could easily just pour resin into this crack. Now where it was leaking out the back over here, I'm just going to put a little bit in and leave it for a while and see if we have see if we have any more leaks.
Whilst I was waiting, I filled the other crack up. On the table, obviously.
Okay, so I was just about to mix up a new batch of resin when I heard that sound. So it started dripping where it didn't drip from before. But I'm going to take that up and cross my fingers and again hope for the best. Basically silicone the end up. I'm going to retape it. I've got to fill that bit of crack up, and there's like a few little holes and like a few little dips that I'm going to fill.
And I do really need to move this table because I've just got an order in. I've got 2 weeks to do a 2.2 by 1.5 metre sign, and I'm going to need the floor space.
Okay, so this one has turned out particularly bubbly. I think it's because it's too cold, because this happened last time. Same resin, like even partly the same bottle, and yeah, it's not looking as clear.
So I've gone and hit that with a blowtorch, and hopefully most of these bubbles are going to clear up now.
So my phone ran out of battery and I was under a great deal of time pressure. So what I decided to do was I sanded the top off, got the top layer of resin off, and actually the bubbles didn't look too bad. And underneath you can see how much tape I've used trying to keep that resin in.
Okay, so I've just unscrewed the wheels so I can get to the underneath and sand off all the masking tape. But I reckon the epoxy's holding it on. Okay, so I got it off. Had to get the multi-tool out and the hammer, and it does not look pretty. I've got to sand all the green bits off now anyway, and think about how I'm going to carve in the resin from behind.
Now, I'd seen so many YouTubers that just put the LED lights in the resin, and I would always wonder why they didn't just put resin in the wood and then carve into it from behind. But now I know why. This was such a massively time-consuming part of the project, and all the vibrations from the tools really hurt my hands. It was really not healthy at all.
I'm going to try using this again. I really don't know what I was thinking, because I can't actually see where the resin is on the other side, so it's a bit hit or miss whether I'm actually grinding in the right place. So this is really stupid.
So I thought I'd be able to get this done before the end of the day, and it was very clear to see I was going to get nowhere near finished. After a few hours I'd actually managed to find the resin, but I still hadn't managed to carve out a decent chunk towards it. It was promising though, because I could see the light through it, but it was also very apparent that I'm going to have to sand it down a lot more than 240 grit.
Okay guys, today is the day. The sun is out. This means I can get my table out, I can sand it down, I can carve the bottom, and hopefully I'll get all the stuff I need done outside today, because after today it looks like there is going to be a lot of rain. So I'm gonna do my best. It is 9 AM on a Saturday. How early can I start before I wake the neighbours up?
Now I am really lucky to have really lovely neighbours, and whenever I'm doing a project like this I do what I can to keep the noise down, and usually if I do have a lot of work to do I'll do it in about 2-hour bursts so that they get a break throughout the day. However, with this project in particular, that just wasn't possible. I probably spent the whole day on the power tools, but it was a one-off and I make sure not to do it again. So another reason it's a bad idea to carve from behind is because you don't know exactly where the resin is from underneath. I drilled several holes to see if I could find the resin, but I was never sure how far to drill in, because if I missed the resin I'd go all the way through the table.
I really want to get this done today. There's part of me that's considering a chainsaw. It will definitely speed things up, but the wood's so soft and it could go horribly wrong. Kind of wishing I just put the LEDs inside now.
So I found this cheap Chinese electric mini chainsaw, which I'm quite reluctant to use, but might get round to it. I think what worries me about this is it's got no oil in it. I'm just afraid it's going to get too hot. It's more for trimming trees than carving through that. And I've got a router. I haven't got a spiral up bit, but I've got some of these. So I started carving at 9 AM and I didn't finish until 4:30 PM. I was really keen to get this done because it was due to rain and I really wanted to get a layer of Rubio monocoat on before I put it back inside. So I went for the whole day with no food, just drinking water, and finally got into a flow that worked for me. I found that using the router to get started would get me a nice wide hole. I then used the Manpa cutting disc to get in deeper, and then after that I could use various grinder bits on the die grinder to start carving around the resin. I also used a studio light to shine through the resin. This just made it easier to see what I was doing, and I'd know whether to make the hole wider to let more light through. Okay, so this is the final result. It looks awful. Luckily this is the bottom. So I've had a little accident here. Here I think I've got inside a grasshopper there. Here inside a big bug as well. So to stop the bugs getting all smelly, mouldy and decaying inside the table, I decided to go and get some super glue. Now for this I used a 2-part super glue because it dries really quickly. You simply squirt the super glue into the hole and fill it up, and then spray over the top, and this will make it dry within seconds. To make sure, I just put another bit of super glue on and then sprayed it again. I don't think this was necessary, but I really don't want any air or bacteria getting inside these bugs. And you can see within a few seconds, it's okay for me to tap. Okay guys, so £50 later, I've got this tiny little tin of Rubio monocoat. Now this is going to protect the table. Now I say the redwood is really soft, so it's still going to take scratches and bashes, but this should stop any water or alcohol doing too much damage to the table. I'm just going to have to put up with the fact the table is going to get damaged unless I cover it with epoxy, but I don't want to cover it with epoxy because I don't want a really glossy finish. So I'm going to put this on the back. Now the back obviously looks awful and I'm not going to look at it, but the reason I'm putting it on the back is because if you don't put it on both sides, it might warp the table and I don't want to risk that at this stage. Everybody else on YouTube's used a syringe to mix it, so I've nicked my daughter's cowpole. Now, if you go on YouTube and search for ways to finish epoxy tables, Rubio monocoat is one of the most popular recommended things. Now, I am always skeptical of anyone that's been paid to promote a product. I don't know how honest their review is going to be. But I do want a really nice finish for the table, so I thought I would give it a go. So, at the time of filming this, I only have 3 subscribers, and it's safe to say no one is paying me to use their product, or even sending it to me for free. And although I have affiliate links, at the time of filming, this wasn't one of them, so there's no reason why I wouldn't give you my honest opinion of this product. Okay, now I know this side was never going to look good, but I don't really like this at all. I think it's too dark. Now something that's worrying me is that where I've got the epoxy, it's gone very dark, and there's some bits around the shells on the other side on the ammonites that have epoxy and it's going to go horrible and dark. So despite my concerns, I decided to give the top a coat as well. This was because if you do the bottom, you should do the top as well to make sure it doesn't bend. Now I only did this to make sure it didn't warp, and if I didn't like it, I could just sand it off again. Now the thing I liked about the Rubio monocoat was it was easy to mix. You put one layer on and then you wipe it off afterwards, and one coat is all you need. It's really great for saving time. Now, something I feel that's important to point out here is that it was very good at stopping water from staining it, but I couldn't see any protection from scratches or knocks. I found the wood still dented very easily. So if you want something that's a bit more resistant to scratching, epoxy or shellac would be the way to go. Now I do think it's expensive for what it is, but in the end, I was very happy with the result. But this isn't the end. After applying the finish, I wasn't actually finished. See, I thought the Rubio monocoat would make the epoxy clearer, because here you can see where I've got the water on, it's a lot clearer, and then where it's dried, it is not. So at this point, I'm going to have to sand down all the epoxy to at least 3000 grit. Okay guys, so I've been on Amazon again, and I have ordered a 5cm round sanding thingy.
I'm going to go from 320 grit up to 3000. I don't know if these are going to be too wide for the bits of resin on the table, because obviously it's going to take off a bit of the wood as well. So if it starts taking it off and it doesn't look very good, I'm going to have to do it by hand. But let's just see what happens.
So I put the sanding disc into my die grinder and tested it out on the side of the table to start off with. Now, I was really worried about messing up the wood, and it was really awkward to hold. My concern was that if I had to sand the whole table to 3000 grit, I only had tiny sanding discs and it would take ages for me to sort this out. So after it fell off, I tried a bit by hand. And after doing this for a short while, I realised it was going to take way too long to do it this way. So I went back to it in the die grinder, I worked my way through all the grits, and I was really pleased with the results. So I could have gone further to 4000 grit and polish it, but I decided to stop here. And I know over time it's going to get more character as it gets a little bit scratched anyway. But now my biggest concern was I had this white halo around the wood from where I had sanded some parts of the wood to 3000 grit and the bits around it to 4000. So I decided to get 240 grit sandpaper and go around the outside of all the resin and sand the wood down to 240 grit to get rid of the halos. Now, I had no idea if this would work. This was the first time I've tried something like this. So it's obviously a really scary moment when you think you've finished and then you've got to go back and make alterations, which could possibly ruin the whole table. But after sanding, I used the rest of the Rubio Monocoat to patch up the bits I'd missed. That's the great thing about Rubio Monocoat, you can sand down individual areas and coat them. If I was doing this with oil, for example, I'd have to sand down the entire table and the whole thing. Otherwise, you would see stains where it's been patched up. Now here you can see some bits that are particularly white where I have sanded them quite heavily, but the monocoat is still wet and I'm hoping that these will disappear when it dries. It's not until I make these videos I realise how much I hope throughout my projects.
But I'm finally there now. I'm happy with the finish. Well, I'm as happy as I can be with the finish. It's still, it's not perfect, but then I wasn't going for perfect. There's little patches here and there that are slightly different colours, but actually I quite like that. And as time goes on, it's going to take some knocks, it's going to take some dinks, it's going to get scratched. It's just something that if I don't want to cover this table with epoxy, I'm going to have to accept. So I feel the logical next stage would be to actually put the LEDs in. However, I'm going to put this in place because I've got the electrician coming soon, and I don't want a table in the middle of the room.
So, to get this desk in place, I've decided to put battens on the wall. By mounting the desk to the wall, I don't have to decide what legs to put on it because, well, it won't have legs. By doing this, it also gives me more space underneath to be able to move things in and out. I'm hoping that the 100mm thickness of the wood and support from three sides will be plenty to hold it in place. And again, we have more hope. Now, on the left-hand wall here, I've decided to use some scaffolding board. That's because I've got wires going through where I wanted to put the batten, so I've had to use a wider piece of wood because this is going to be really important that I hit the studs in the wall and it's held very securely in place, and I do not want to go through the electrics. I'm also going to have stuff underneath the table to hide these beams, so if you're thinking it looks horrible, you are correct, but no one's going to be able to see it by the time the room is finished.
I haven't done anything in here for about 2 weeks now. Reason being, I need to get the table into place. Now, I didn't think this would be as hard as I'm finding it. So today I've got some family coming around and they're going to help me move it into position, even if they don't know it yet. I just really hope that it fits into place. Yeah, it's surprisingly light for wood, actually. So the idea... So, right. Okay, everybody listen. This is the plan. Yeah, so what we're going to do is worry about that later. I'm worried about you getting crushed and dying.
I'm worried about you getting crushed and dying.
I'm less worried about that because I don't have to watch somebody else die.
That's to watch both.
So I'd move backwards a bit. We'll get this level. I don't know if it's actually going to fit.
So am I. No, it's scratching your wall.
Like a millimetre?
Yeah.
That's alright, don't worry. It's like, the thing is it actually did fit, but like it scraped the wall. That's how tight the fit was. Can I have like half hour and I'll try shaving the end off?
Yeah.
Is that alright? Sorry.
We'll go across stuff, get coffee, and then come back and we can do it. Does anyone want anything?
So I was literally off by a millimetre. You can see it shaved the wall there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure in probably 5mm or so and take it off of this end here. Now the ideal tool for choice here would be the planer, but I don't have one and I want to get this done before my family go home. So I've got to use a sander again. What I haven't done here is use a circular saw and cut most of the way through, because doing it in this position would be reckless and dangerous, and I wouldn't do that. Oh, Tony, what was that?
Are you always blaming something
That was
else? Never you. So chickpeas.
Yeah, there's it. It fits, does it? Oh,
Yeah.
no.
They need to come up, don't they? Come up higher. Hang on. Scratch that little window.
That's all right.
Up a bit, and then stove.
Yeah. There you go.
So if you push, I'll just give it a bit of weight from underneath and you should be able to slide.
That's all right. That fits quite nice now, doesn't it?
Now, between fitting the desk and doing the electrics for the LEDs, there was a huge time gap. Like, seriously, next time you see me, I'm going to have a lumberjack's beard. The reason for this was I still didn't even know how to turn on these LEDs. When you attach the live and the ground wires, it doesn't turn the lights on, because you also need to send the information to the LEDs to tell them what to do with the data cable. And here is my first attempt at soldering the 3 wires to the LEDs. It's not good, and neither is my second attempt. But in total I had to do 33 solders, and by the end I was quite happy with the results. I certainly feel I improved. My first 3 solders took me 40 minutes to do, and my last 3 solders took me 5. The next step is to find a way to send the data to the LEDs. Now, to start off with, I just used a simple LED, and after a ton of research on YouTube, I decided to go with an ESP32 board. This allowed me to both power this LED and easily add a touch sensor. Once I got the touch sensor working, I decided to add this smart LED. This was a long process. I won't go into the details in this video. If you would like to learn how I did this, I have the idea of making a lamp which uses all the same electronics, and it would be a video where you can follow along and make one yourself. If you're interested in this idea, drop a comment in the section down below and I'll prioritise this video. And the truth of the matter is, I didn't realise how difficult this would be. Using the ESP32 board, I found that I would have to learn to program. But to get around this, I just told ChatGPT what I wanted it to do, and ChatGPT wrote the program for me. I'll drop a link in the description down below to the code if you are interested. Now, I would love to learn how to code, and the great thing about ChatGPT is that if you want to know what the code is doing in any particular line, it can break it down in any level of detail you would like to know. So although I didn't write the code, the process really helped my understanding, and it probably got me what would take 6 months of training done in a few hours. I also had an issue with the LEDs changing to the wrong colour, but I put the problem into ChatGPT and it helped me troubleshoot it. And again, the information I got from this was absolutely staggering, and it was a huge jump forward in my knowledge. As part of my self-improvement routine, every morning I train my abs, and I never thought this would be useful for DIY, but here it really was. Where I lacked the brain power to put the LEDs in before I mounted the table, my abs and back muscles were really put to the test. I found that the glue on the back of the LEDs were not sufficient to hold them in place, so I used a hammer and tacks, and at some points I even used a 2-part superglue. But once it was all in place, I gave it a test, and it worked perfectly. Almost.
And that is the desk finished. Now unfortunately I've had to build a wall and some shelves, so they're going to be in the way of the final shot, but once it's all in place, it'll really help the aesthetics of the desk. Now one of the things that I think makes this desk really special is the history behind it. About 120 years ago, a seed about this size would have grown and turned into a huge tree, and this is just a small fraction of it. And just like this seed, I have grown throughout this project. Now I'm used to working with wood, but this has been the hardest piece of wood to work, purely from the size and just moving it around. I've also had to learn about kerf to do the inlays, and I've also had to learn a bit of programming and a bit more electronics. And going forwards, I'm going to lean into this and learn even more, and I hope you come along too. But here is the final result. I hope you like it.
I also put in a little secret mode. If you hold the button down for 3 seconds, it turns green. So there are things that have gone wrong with this, and it is not 100% perfect, but I've got there in the end. And if there's just one thing you can take away from this video, it's don't ask yourself if you can, ask yourself how you can.